Yes. Chair Lippert.
Present.
Board Member Guyer.
Here.
Board Member Malone Pritchard.
Present.
And we have two absent members at this point in time, Randy Pop and Alexander Liu, but they're expected to be here.
Okay, we'll note that one. Oh,
for the record, Randy Pop has.
Okay, great. Okay, so are there any agenda additions or changes or deletions?
None.
Okay, great. So we'll begin with oral communication. This is the time when members of the public may speak to any item that is not on today's agenda. And we have one speaker card, Mark Weiss, and you will have 3 minutes, Mr. Weiss.
Good morning, Mark Weiss, 1788 Oak Creek Drive. I spoke to your July 3rd meeting, and I noticed in the minutes, the proposed minutes, I felt that fact was inaccurately or insufficiently noted, in that the minutes say I spoke on a variety of topics, but very specifically, I asked about 101 Lytton, and I compared it to Alma Village, both in terms of the signage that exceeded the normals, and I also wondered about the relationship between the development community and the financial community, like venture capital, equity, hedge fund, and the interplay between those two. Is that something we should track? In that I had noticed that recently the tenant at the Alma Village grocery outlet had filed for an IPO, and I was wondering, did we know, is it relevant that they were planning to go public for $1 billion or some such, and would that have played into why they were pushing for a big sign? And I was suggesting that these signs are not just wayfinding for pedestrians. I said, how many times can you get lost, for example, trying to find the building at the corner of Lytton and Alma? But I was suggesting that sometimes these push for impressive corporate branding is an appeal to quote-unquote Wall Street or Sand Hill or the finance community. And I was just suggesting it was something that, on behalf of the people, the leadership, commissioner, staff should sort of keep track of. So I was hoping, I'm not just reiterating that today, but I was also asking if you could amend your minutes to note that I spoke specifically about the Lytton Gateway building.
Okay, we don't have those minutes before us today.
No, and I might add that the ARB minutes are quite different from the Planning and Transportation Commission minutes, which are more a verbatim style. The ARB minutes are sense minutes, so we don't capture each and every point that is made. In fact, if you look at the minutes for preliminary review items, which can take an hour or more, we simply say that the item was discussed and there was no action taken. So it's quite a different format from other minutes.
Yeah, you have 30 seconds left. If you want, you can comment.
Well, one, I had published my remarks, and I mentioned that I was reading from something I'd already published. And two, if I mention a specific project, you don't have to characterize much about what I actually said in 3 minutes, but you could say I spoke on that project.
Okay, well, we don't have those minutes before, so if you'll take that up with staff, they'll make sure that it accurately is reflected in those minutes, Mr. Weiss. Thank you. If there are any other speakers that are speaking to any item that is not onto today's agenda, you may do so at this time. Okay, seeing none, we will go to minutes. And we have 2 sets of minutes to review and approve today. We have Thursday, June 5th, and we have Thursday, June 19th. Are there any revisions to these minutes?
I just have one minor comment on the June 19th meeting under subcommittee. I was absent that day, so subcommittee members are incorrect. It has my name listed.
It was Board Member Liu on that day. Yeah, if you could reflect that. Thank you.
With that change, I'll move that we approve the June 19th minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Abstain.
Opposed? Okay, and then we have the June 5th minutes.
I'll move that we approve those minutes.
And I was absent.
I'll second.
Okay, so, oh wait, no, I was present, that's right. Okay, so with that, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those pass. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the first order of business, 250. This is a minor review, 250 Hamilton Avenue, request by Orner Tuzor of Petra Systems for architectural review of a 6-month-long test project consisting of installation of 9 new street light-mounted solar modules in the public right-of-way along El Camino Real. Environmental assessment exempt from the provisions of CEQA per guideline section 15301. And before staff introduces the item, I just want to point out that in the staff report, it says State of California. I think you meant State of California Department of Transportation, okay? Very minor.
Yes, Russ Reich is the project planner on this and knows more of the details than I. But I will just say, yeah, the state of California is ultimately, the approving, the property owner technically. So they would be responsible for signing off on the, authorizing the installation. But it is subject to our architectural review process. And again, this is a pilot. The applicant can describe the next steps after the pilot because I'm not sure that was covered. I'll pass it to the applicant.
Okay, Mr. Tuzor, you will have 10 minutes to make your presentation. And if you could state for the record your name as you begin.
My name is Omer. Tsur is my last name. I'm the application engineer for Petra Solar. So I have a very brief presentation, maybe even less than 10 minutes. I'll just speak very, very briefly about Petra so you know who we are, speak about the product, show the site, and speak about the project. So the background. In 2009, Petra received a grant from the U.S. Department of Energy to develop a small microinverter that has advanced grid functions. After a year, we came with a product. Our first large customer was PSE&G, which is a large utility on the East Coast. We had a project with them for 200,000 of these units. This microinverter comes with a solar module. You can see the photos right there. Combined together, it is installed on poles. It can be street light or it can be just electric poles. And this is our major customer. Since then, we had several projects throughout the world. In California, the major one we have is with LADWP, which we have several hundreds of our units in a pilot for more than 2 years. Regarding Palo Alto, in support of Palo Alto's climate protection plan and local solar plan, we signed with the city about 6 months ago as part of the Emerging Technology Innovation and Demonstration Program, a pilot. The pilot is about 9 units, and it has 2 main objectives. First objective is to solicit public feedback, see what the public think about our product. And the second one is to see how the product comply with Palo Alto utilities. It's important to mention that the pilot is temporary. It's supposed to be installed for 6 months. So the product has 3 components. It has a solar module, which is frameless. It has the microinverter, which Petra manufactures, and it has the racking system that attached both of these components to the pole itself. The frameless solar is unique. It's not like the regular solar modules that you see because it doesn't have a frame. It's 2 plates of glass laminated together with the silicon cells in the middle, which is more statics. The microinverter is a small aluminum polished device, 12 by 8 inches, attached to the back of the solar module and then mounted on the top of the pole. You can see to your right how it looks. The solar is installed in landscape. It has a 30 degrees tilt. This is for the best solar exposure. There are no wires. You can see that there are 2 wires there, but they are attached to the pole at the very top, and there is no conduit and no free wire. Everything runs inside the pole itself. What you see here, how it looks with the streetlight pole. This is a side view. This is typical of what we're going to see in the site. 25 feet tall streetlight, about 15 feet or above our system will be installed. This is for vehicle clearance, although in the side there are no vehicle underneath because this is installed on the sidewalk. And you can see there are no wires. Everything is embedded within the pole and connected at the base of the pole. So this is the suggested site. It's on El Camino, south to Embarcadero. The streetlights that are adjacent, the streetlight on El Camino are adjacent to Palo Alto High, also next to Palo Alto school district offices, and also to some residential neighborhood more to the south, where there's a divider between the residential neighborhoods to El Camino. That's the site plan. The site plan, you can see there are small circles. Each circle represents existing streetlight. The one that has air coming from it with a number, that's the selected streetlight that we chose to install the system on. The streetlights are not clustered together because there's a lot of shade, there's a lot of trees and vegetation, and this is important to mention that we're not going to change the site. We're not going to trim trees, we're not going to trench, we're not going to alter the site in any way. We're just going to use what's existing, and that's why I had to spread this over such a long area. This is an aerial view of Google Earth, and this is the part where you see at the very top the school district offices, and towards the south more you see the residential neighborhood. You can see the divider between the two lanes on El Camino, and there's additional divider between El Camino to the residential neighborhood where the street lights are installed and where we're going to be putting our system. This is an attempt to show a simulation with Photoshop. In the center, you can see the street light itself, and this is exactly taken where you saw the previous photo with the divider between El Camino to the residential area. So that's the divider that you see to the right, and in the center there is a street light and there is a solar module to scale on top of it. These are two examples of existing installation that we have. The one at the top is it's under the jurisdiction of LADWP, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. This is in Porter Ranch. It's been there for more than 2 years. The one at the bottom is from the East Coast. This is part of the installation that we have there. We have 200,000 of these installed on the East Coast, the one that you see at the bottom. Almost last slide. There are other benefits that comes with a solar installation. Each one of these units communicates between itself wirelessly, which means that there is a network, wireless network established between them. The wireless network can be utilized by the city. You can read meters that comply with the same protocol, gas or water. There's also a nice portal, and you see images from the portal there. Part of the outreach campaign that we're going to have with the public is we're going to have public access to this portal, so people can log in and see, how much renewable energy is generated, and other advantages that you can see through the portal. There's also a school there. It can be used for educational purposes if there's any course about renewable energy. And just to summarize, so we're talking about 9 solar units with renewable energy generated, and the power generated is close to the loads. We don't have to take this power from anywhere else, but it's going to be generated within the city and consumed in the city. The units operate wirelessly, establishing a network. Network can be utilized by the city. The Palo designed to be removed after 6 months, so it's temporary. During the 6 months, we're going to have a public outreach campaign. We're going to have labels on the poles pointing to the website, to the city website, pointing to the project. We're going to send emails, and we're going to work with the city to do this public outreach campaign. And the last thing, we're going to be work to see compliance with the Palo Alto utilities. That's it.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any board member questions of the applicant? Vice Chair Palo?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm excited to see this happening, and I find it compelling, and I'm certain that we'll be successful with this. I just had a couple questions for you about how the system works, first of all. Does it have a battery pack that's part of it that stores energy, or is it pushing power back to the grid?
It just push power back to the grid. There is an option for battery, but that's not this option is not discussed.
Okay. And as I understand, we're reviewing today only for testing, and then these will be removed, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you remove them, how will the poles be repaired?
Well, the only The only difference to the pole will be a tiny hole, I would assume probably a quarter of an inch, where we're going to run the wires through the very top 15 feet above grade.
Okay, great.
And it's going to go down to the bottom of the pole where we're going to connect to the
Where the
existing
junction
wires.
box is.
So, and this is going to be sealed, so that's the only
Okay, that's
invisible.
great. Thank you very much. And then you answered my question, I think, already, but these are only on one side of the street.
Yes.
Do you envision them being on both sides eventually, or is it really just because of the solar orientation they can only go in certain places?
So the reason for choosing just one side was because I was not completely sure about how, the other side is Stanford University, so I was not sure exactly how it works there. I know there's a lot of signage at Stanford, announcing a new football season. So I decided just to leave this side away and to deal with the other side of El Camino, but generally speaking, it can be utilized as well.
Okay, and you sort of just answered my next question, which was, have you coordinated the placement of these with the banner brackets that are in place that announce events and activities happening in the city?
So it was not coordinated with that. When I did the site survey, there were no signs, so I never suspicious of that, but since then I saw a few signs. I also saw the height of the signs, so it might not be an issue. It might be even work, might coexist, but I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, it would be good, I think, to check into that. And then the only last comment I guess I was going to make is
No, we're only doing questions here.
only questions.
Only questions right now. We still have to open the public hearings.
Okay, that's it.
Sorry. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah,
Board Member Guyer?
Can the panel be rotated 90 degrees? Or does it have to be in this position?
It can be pivoted wherever,
No, I'm thinking more, instead of like this, can it be like that?
instead of landscape.
So let's say,
portrait.
right.
Not for this application. If it's going to be the way you suggested, then we'll have to hold it at the bottom. It's a bit, it's going to be a bit more complicated. Landscape is the preferred method.
So it can be done, it's just that the bracket's designed to do it
Exactly,
in
yes.
a horizontal. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And now it's still at 30 degrees for optimum solar exposure for summer and winter. If it will have to be, like suggested in portrait, to receive this 30 degrees, it will be very much away and off from the pole, which
Board Member Malone Pritchard?
Just a couple. You said it's going to be about 15 feet high. Is that a consistent height for all of them, or will that vary depending on trees, et cetera?
So it will be at least 15 feet. It will be consistent whatever the height will be, because we want this to look actually the idea was that it will be even clustered together, so you can get the impact of how they look together, but it was impossible because of solar exposure. But whatever the height will be decided, it will be consistent with all of them.
And then the pole labels, do you have examples of those you can share with us?
We don't have, unfortunately, examples. We're just waiting for this event to. But I would assume it will be a label, very clear to read, pointing to the website, pointing to the city website, and then pointing to the project with ability to solicit for some feedback as much as possible from the public.
Thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions. So the power that's generated goes through an inverter and into the main service, and then at night you're basically using that power, that excess power that's been generated by other means, so to speak. Why not simply have the solar panels located in a remote location and dump it into the grid somewhere in California, and then that way we don't have these solar panels on the poles?
So first of all, it's happening. Of course, there are large farms of solar. This is taking advantage of existing assets like streetlights, which can be utilized to generate more energy. So why not? The main reason, though, I wouldn't call it the main reason, but one of the reasons, if you do generate power somewhere far, you have to carry the power over here. Carrying the power has a lot of losses to it. I don't know what the percentage is, it depends, the system or the voltage, but it can be, not talking about 5%, it can be larger than 50% loss. So talking about renewable, if you can have the power generated where the loads are, that's ideal. And that's why the large utility in the East Coast installed 40 megawatts of these small systems, but aggregated together, there's a lot of benefit to the city because it's going to be consumed where it is generated.
Okay, well, that brings me to my second question. Why not simply have some sort of Cobra head that has a solar array built into the top of the unit so that we don't have more stuff? Yeah, good word. I like that.
What do you mean by Cobra head, if I may ask?
Yeah, why not have a Cobra head that's designed that has an LED pan, okay, with a solar array on top of that? Cobra head is the light unit that's at the top.
So first of all, I think there are some, well, it's an option. I don't know how big the Cobra head. Don't forget, the larger the solar cell is, the more energy it can generate. So, Cobra head compared with the solar module, it's probably going to generate 1/10 of the amount of power. Don't forget that this is not necessarily there to replace the amount of power that the light consumes. It's just there to take advantage of the existing assets somewhere, up on the air and to push the power to the grid.
Okay, well, we'll have some comments later. Okay, so this is the time when members of the public may speak to this item. If I have any applicants or I'm sorry, any members of the public that wish to speak? Oh, you don't have to fill out the card yet. You can speak and then you can fill out the card if you like. Save time and energy. Okay? So you can fill it out when you're finished. Please announce who you are, and
Sure.
you'll have 3 minutes.
Craig Lewis, I'm the founder and executive director of the Clean Coalition. We are a nonprofit focused on accelerating the transition to renewable energy and modernizing the grid. Our main office, headquarter office, is in Palo Alto Square, and I chime in on a lot of city council meetings and utility advisory commission meetings, but this is my first time here at the Architectural Review Board, so thank you for having this forum. I just want to say that I think that the Petra solution is fantastic. I think everybody has heard of the distributed generation concept. The Petra solution is absolutely the most distributed generation solution that's available. There are lots of benefits to doing this, many of which I'm sure you've heard this morning, but they include the fact that there's a smart module on these units which allows you to dim the lights, allows you to send information from the grid, knowing what the voltage level there, the frequency level of the grid is at that point is really, really valuable. So there's a lot of benefits beyond the obvious ones, like generating renewable energy in a distributed form across the grid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you'd fill out a speaker card and give it to the clerk. Okay, any other speakers on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll return. Oh, we have another speaker here. Go ahead. You can.
Am I allowed to ask you the question, or is it just a comment?
Actually, it's you're not asking questions.
It's just a comment.
You can ask the questions. Whether we answer them,
Okay.
that's another issue.
I'm Zach Rubin. I'm a local community member, and I have a solar development company called Think Energy. I have no real participation in this project, just interested to see the outcome. But my question was just for Robert and Lee, because you asked questions about portrait versus landscape and then Cobra head, whether or not you could have a panel on that Cobra head. Are those questions based off of the aesthetics is that why you're asking those questions, because your concern is based off the aesthetics and the look of how that's being presented?
You know, we generally don't answer
Okay.
questions for members of the public, but
Okay.
you can put that question
put
out
that
there,
que-
and maybe somebody will nibble.
Okay.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I have seen this technology before in back east in New Jersey, and actually to comment on what Craig said, I do think that it makes sense to generate energy at that source because there is a loss of energy that's generated once you carry it over longer distances. So I think it's a cool and good project. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. And if you'd fill out a speaker card and give it to the clerk, I'd appreciate it. Okay, any other members of the public? Okay, with that, we will return to the board for comments and action. So we'll begin with board member, Vice Chair Pop.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say, again, very interesting, and I'm glad to see this happening. The only comment I would make, and our role here is character and quality. That's what we're in charge of assessing and making recommendations on, and so the technology and all these other things are outside of what I consider to be our purview. But in terms of how this looks and how it's organized and overall what it does within the fabric of the city, I find that to be something that is important for us to address and make sure we're on top of. So the one comment that I would make to you is I think that the hanger bracket that you've designed seems clunky, for lack of a better term, a little bit inelegant, and I was hoping that as part of the test project here, you might be able to take a look at how those appear, find a way to integrate it with the aesthetic of the pole, the sleekness of that, the design of the cobra head, and pick up on some of those design cues and try and find a way to make this look like it's not just an armature that's just bolted onto a pole and strapped in at some point, but that it was really designed to be part of an assembly that was anticipated from the get-go. And to the degree that you have the ability to more carefully design your connections and the brackets and the supporting elements, I think it would go a long way towards making this look very clean and sleek. And I would encourage you to take a look at that. The other thing that I would like to ask is that the staff work with the applicant to create some type of significant signage, not just a little sticker on the pole or something small, but very often when we're in the middle of a test project, I'm remembering the signage that was up on Arrastradero Road. A pretty good sized sign up that said, there's a test project going on, here's what it's about, if you have questions, call. I think it would be really beneficial to have something like that in this particular case, where we've got something new and unique and really call people's attention to the fact that we're trying to do something fairly progressive here, and make sure that everybody's aware of it. The amount of traffic that goes back and forth past there is enormous, and it would be great for people to become more aware of this. So that's it. I'm prepared to approve this project today, so thank you very much.
Okay, Board Member Guyer.
I don't mind answering your question. Yes, it was an aesthetic, mainly because of the fact that I thought from the side is much less of an obstruction, and from the front, having the thing sideways makes it much more obvious than if it was in. But I do agree that, seeing as though our purview here is dealing with the aesthetics of it rather than the functionality of it, the bracket does obviously look like something that was bolted on afterwards, and rather than actually thought of and put together as a package. So I think something like that. And I understand completely that the angle would need to be the same, but looking at it straight on, I think it's less of an obstruction or something that you see if it's, as you call it, portrait rather than landscape. I have seen these things just recently when we started. I was driving on 101 and I noticed they have a batch of these things, and they really aren't. In fact, those had doubles, so they had two of them on there, and they're really not that bad. I mean, the one nice thing about this is, and the whole thing, I initially thought that this was based on generating its own power right there on the source, my fellow commissioner mentioned, why not just have some main unit somewhere that generates the power and then lights these. There is one thing, and that's sort of the warm and fuzzy feeling concept that if the unit is there, people go, aha, we're actually doing something, rather than, yes, theoretically, there is a solar panel somewhere in East Cleveland that's powering this thing. And everybody gives you the, yeah, sure, I've been there before. So in that respect, I don't mind seeing the thing, but I would like to see some more thought put to how it's presented.
Board Member Malone Pritchard.
I'm very much in support of what you're proposing here. I am sensitive to the comments about the brackets. However, this being only a 6-month trial, I would be willing to accept the brackets as proposed, with the condition that when they come down, if they do go up again after the trial, the brackets would come back to ARB and be more carefully designed. And I'm also in agreement on the signage. This is a big educational opportunity, and I think it should be celebrated.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm very much in support of the notion, the idea of what we're doing here. Street lighting throughout the state, if not the country and the world, is a great consumer of electricity. And in this case, we're trying to reach the goals of AB 32, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The great disconnect for me is that here we are generating electricity, it's put into the grid, it's used during the daytime, and then we're taking energy off of the grid. It could come from anywhere. It could be hydroelectric, it could be solar, it could be wind, it could be anything. But it gets pumped into the grid, and then it gets taken out and used for the street lighting. Our board is charged with making recommendations on the quality and character of the built environment here. And I'm a great believer in form follows function. And I no longer believe that the shape of solar panels has to be the shape of solar panels. If you follow the photovoltaic industry, it actually started out by they would grow these solar cells in cylinders, and they would slice them very thin into wafers, and that's the reason why we wind up with circular solar cells. But that's not the case anymore. They grow them all which way and any shape you need, including square, rectangle, triangular, circular, and they are flexible. The whole industry has changed dramatically in the last 40 years. I think that there's a tremendous opportunity by looking at either the Cobra head or the pole itself. The pole itself has tremendous surface area and is able to support having solar cells mounted directly to that surface. In fact, it could be applied to half a cylinder, which would give you a clear view of angle of the sun coming around and tracking around that pole. And they could be made into rectangular units that could then be slivers that are clad onto the pole, and by virtue of their form, go away.
There are also flexible ones, so there can be wrapped.
Well, the point is that I think that there are greater opportunities, and rather than thinking of items that are out of the box, thinking of outside the box and innovating and coming up with much better solutions to this. Be that, I've had my say. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. I think that we should go ahead with the trial, but it definitely needs to return to this board, and I think that when it does return to the board, we need to be thinking of other ways of applying solar cells to these poles, so that they are not eyesores and they're not obvious. Pretty soon, solar cells will be fairly ubiquitous. They're going to be throughout the entire environment, and however we can use them and have them applied differently is going to be a great asset to building technology. And I think that the state of California has the clout to be able to innovate and come up with some other solutions, and maybe in conjunction with some work that's being done with high-tech startups, as well as the UC system can benefit from this. So I think I invite your company to, I challenge your company to come up with other ways of doing this.
I'll take it with me.
So thank you very much. Do I have a motion here?
I move that we recommend approval of the project as presented, with the condition that at the end of the 6 months, if the panels are going to go back up, that project come back to ARB, and that the labeling and/or signage come back to subcommittee.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Board Member Guyer, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I just feel that this is a really good idea. It's the right thing for Palo Alto to be doing, and I think that aesthetically it is acceptable for a 6-month period.
Okay. Do you wish to speak to your second?
That's fine.
Okay, any discussion?
Friendly amendment to include some type of significant notification signage for the project.
I would accept that if it comes back to subcommittee.
Do you accept that?
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second, as well as a friendly amendment. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2. This is a major review, 930 Emerson Street, request by Hayes Group Architecture, Inc., on behalf of Emerson High LLC for architectural review of the renovation of an existing building, including a design enhancement exception for a new parapet wall, an addition of 759 square feet, detached garage on an 11,250 square foot site, to change the use from auto service to office use, environmental assessment exempt from the provisions of CEQA, per CEQA section 15.311, and this is in the zone district RT 35. Okay, so if staff would like to introduce the project, please.
Sure. Good morning. The request is to conduct an architectural review of the renovation of an existing building, including a design enhancement exception for a new parapet wall and site modifications, including the addition of 759 square foot detached garage, to change the use from auto service to office use. The applicant proposes to remodel the existing facade on each frontage to update the building for its new use as office space, with building and site amenities such as recess entries and accessibility upgrades and new landscaping, and an accessible path of travel from Emerson Street to the building entrance. Exterior materials include panelized cement fiberboard, cement plaster walls, excuse me, new windows, and aluminum canopy with translucent glass, anodized aluminum windows and frames. The parking lots will be modified with new landscaping, and a parking garage with car lifts will be constructed on the parking lot accessible from High Street to meet the parking requirements. The project site is located in the South of Forest Area Coordinated Area Plan, Zone District RT 35, residential transition with 35-foot maximum height. The SOFA 2 cap contains development standards, parking requirements, design guidelines, and performance standards for environmental protection and compatibility with the various uses within the district. The building is currently non-compliant with regard to side setback and daylight plane requirements at the side abutting the R2 district to the southeast. The applicant is requesting a design enhancement for the raised parapet, which is necessary to meet the fire protection requirements. Staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board recommend the Director of Planning and Community Environment approve the proposed project based on the Architectural Review findings, South of Forest Coordinated Area Plan findings, and design enhancement exception findings, and subject to the conditions of approval. And that concludes my staff report, and the applicant is here to make a presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hayes, you will have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects. I'll be presenting the project on behalf of my clients, Mike Corson and Kevin Cunningham, who are in the audience today. We're also joined by our landscape architect, in case you have questions for her, Sherry Van Dorn. Before I start, I'd like to thank Margaret Netto, the planner, and Amy French for helping us shepherd this project to this point. Thank you. The site is in the south, the SOFA area. It's a full depth property spanning between Emerson and High Street. It's in the RT35 zoning district, which you can see right here is the site. It's surrounded by RT35 properties, with the exception of an R2 zoning district that wraps in here for the front half of the property, essentially. Most recent use is automotive. It was a smog shop, I think, as well as other kinds of auto repair uses. The existing building is just shy of 5,000 square feet. This is a shot from the Emerson Street side. It's the historic entrance for the property, whereas the High Street side is more utilitarian. And this is the High Street side here. The program is to repurpose the existing automobile service shop to office space, fully park the project on site for the new use, provide new landscaping and site shading with new trees, upgrade and update the existing building materials, and introduce new windows and daylighting opportunities. The building is built on the side property line, so there's no opportunity there. However, there's plenty of opportunity in the roof for additional daylighting as well as new windows. This is the proposed site plan. Emerson Street here and High Street on the left. This is sort of the solar orientation due south, as we all know, at about a 45-degree angle there. Entry points to the parking lot off of Emerson Street here. This will be the main entrance, as I said, and then off of High Street at the rear here. We're keeping the location essentially of the existing Not sure what was worse there. Thank you, Lee. So as I was saying, the High Street entrance is here into the parking lot, and then from Emerson there, the driveway cuts are being replaced, but they're essentially in the same locations as they are today. Pedestrian entrance to the building here, and a pedestrian entrance to the rear of the building there. We're actually carving area out of the building to kind of create these mini patios, give the building some relief, and really demarcate where that entry point would be. It also allows us to increase the surface area for windows for the space. These are other locations of windows, front and rear, to try to introduce daylight, and then we're introducing some skylights on the roof as well. Oop, I think I skipped one. Nope, that's it. And then in the back here we have a car stacker, which is a Klaus Trenvario puzzle lift. Has 11 cars. Any one car can get out at any time without moving any other car off of the lift. So there's always an empty spot in the puzzle lift. Additional parking is provided at grade here and in the back of the building located here. The accessible entrance comes in off of Emerson Street here with new paving and landscaping. We have new fencing going in on the perimeter of the property, and then this is all new landscape trees. Existing tree here on the street is being preserved. I believe these are red maples, and then these are all crepe myrtles here and here. There is no trash facility currently, so we're proposing a new trash and recycling facility at the rear of the property here, and it will have access to High Street. This is the front of the building, Emerson elevation. So the existing building, if I can go back here, essentially a concrete block structure, clear span inside. The sides of the building, the block wraps the front, and the block wraps here as well. At the back of the building, the block wraps and stops there, and the block wraps and stops there. So essentially these are infill wood frame panels between the block, and that was the area that we've targeted for sort of renovation. or a new look. On the front of the building, we were proposing where the roll-up door is where this courtyard would be defined as you walk into the building. We have a canopy here that further defines the entrance, and then infilling the area between the block with a cement fiberboard rain screen panel, and then at the back of the building doing an identical sort of thing. This whole plane, including what wraps the clear story there, is all set back, I don't know, that 10 feet of the courtyard. So it provides shading on this south side for those windows. And then this is the electrical room, and then trash and recycling there. But same concept at the rear, where we're infilling sort of that area that's non-structural between the concrete block walls. The concrete block walls all get painted as well. This is the side of the building. Excuse me, the DEE is being sought for this portion of the parapet here. There's no DEE required for the other side of the building or for the remaining portion of this side of the building. And then this is, it's about a 2'6", well, it's a parapet essentially, because the wall is fire rated. Some 3D views of the back of the building. You can see how we've carved out where the roll-up door was, created recess. I think it's about 8 to 10 feet deep. It wraps up and over the top. These windows are well shaded. The new Trenvario lift system is in an enclosed garage structure with doors that would be roll-up doors to access those vehicles. Moving further out, this shows the new fence line, and then on the other side of the property, the garage is set back from the property line on both the street side and the side property line to create vines. So that essentially the idea is that this wall, which is stuccoed which will be stuccoed initially, will be covered in I think there's a creeping fig that will be on those walls. And then we've used the same sort of partie and infilled between the structure with the fiber cement board rain screen panels. Moving further out still, kind of give you an idea of the context. There's sort of almost looks like an auto wrecking yard sort of next door here. Not much better really right now here, but this would be a nice improvement, I think, to the area. The front of the building, this is the canopy that defines the entrance. Again, the entrance is further defined by this deep recess on the front, and then this would be the pedestrian accessible pathway here. We do have vines and plantings along here, as well as new trees. This doesn't show all the, maybe this does show all the new trees. This next view, or the final view, does not. But view further out, and then I think we have a rendering of the front. This was done before we added some additional trees. There is a new tree proposed here, and there's a tree, this is probably part of it over on this side here, but this is an idea of what the finished product would look like. And that pretty much completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes. Okay, any questions? I have a couple of questions. Can you just basically go through how the occupancy changes increases the non-compliance?
So currently the auto use, converting it to the B occupancy for office with a higher occupancy will require that we bring those aspects of the building that aren't currently up to code, up to code, and the most obvious one is the fire protection of the exterior wall. Currently, it's essentially flush with the roof. So we would raise that 30 inches, and that would be raising a wall in an existing daylight plane that is imposed on us only on the front half because this overlaps the R2. This entire wall is currently non-complying because there is a 10-foot setback. But that is an existing condition that can remain. So the addition of the parapet here is the DEE, if that answers your question. The reason we have to provide some fire resistance, and we know this is one method, is because of the occupancy change.
And Did you review this with the chief building official or plan checkers before you started the?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what were their comments?
Good thing you're addressing the outside wall. There are no fire sprinklers being added. But that was not imposed on us. But we did have to bring this aspect up to current code.
So this is in lieu of fire sprinkling?
No. There are no fire sprinklers being added. This is a requirement regardless of fire sprinklers.
Okay. So are there other ways of achieving that? First of all, let me ask you.
Yes.
It's for the benefit of
Both
the occupants of the B occupancy, not the adjacent residential occupancy.
It's my understanding that parapets actually benefit both the adjoining property as well as the subject property to prevent the spread of fire. If a fire were to break out in this property, the parapet prevents spread of fire to the adjacent building and likewise.
Okay, and is there another way of achieving that fire separation?
There is, and we considered that, but because of the inside of the building has a nice structure, the thought was that we wanted to preserve that on the inside for consistency and for aesthetics, and so this was the option that we chose.
Can you just humor me and illustrate what that is?
What the other option would be? So we would need to, depending on which way the framing is going, now there are existing beams that run transversely, clear spanning across the building. Those, because they run perpendicular to the outside wall, would need to be completely fire rated for their entire span across the building. The existing concrete block walls obviously already have a fire resistance rating, so we wouldn't have to do anything to those. And then the transvert of the joists that are framed between those glue lambs, which I think are about 18 feet on center, would also need to be fire protected for 10 feet back from the wall.
Okay, so it wouldn't you just can't simply clad them with gypboard. You'd have to basically do a different method?
No, the main beams, well, it's a little complicated because they all frame into those main.
Yeah.
It would just be a mess, essentially.
You couldn't just provide a flat seal, a sheetrock ceiling in there that's fire rated and redo the roof?
You would have to do it over the entire space, I would think, because the main structure goes clear span all the way across.
Okay.
And then the joists actually, frame into the side of the main structure, so it just complicates it.
And it couldn't be done with a fire suppression system like...
That's what we tried to do initially. So that both Palo Alto Fire and the then acting building official, Homer Mayal, would not agree to that. We tried to get that as an alternative means, methods, but they would not do it.
Thank you for humoring me. Okay, with that, we will open the public hearing. Are there members of the public that wish to speak to this item? You may do so at this time. If you'd be so kind to introduce yourself and then fill out a speaker card, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Christine Kim, and I am a resident of Palo Alto. I live directly across the street from this property, and I'm here just simply because I walk by every day and I see this old vacant building, and it would be nice to see a new office building there. And at first I was concerned about the parking, but they are providing additional parking, so I'm just in full support of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I see another speaker. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then filling out a speaker card.
Good morning.
You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Steve Deanhammer. I live in Crescent Park and work on High Street. I eat lunch across the street at the Creamery every day, and I think it's just going to be a real positive deal. They've got parking, they're close to the train station, and it's going to clean up that area. It's a transitional area, and I think it's nothing but good for the public in that transitional area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay. Okay, I will close the public hearing and we'll return to the board for comments. We'll begin with Board Member Guyer.
Okay, I'm usually not a fan of approving DEEs, but in this particular case, I mean, I understand the what would be required in lieu of the additional 30 inches, and I suspected that it was a fire requirement when you asked for it in the first place. So I don't have as much of a problem with it, especially also because of the fact that the condition that it's in currently and what this is going to bring to the area, I think is a big benefit. I don't really have any problems with this project as it is, and I can support it.
Okay, Board Member Malone Pritchard.
I'm very much in support of the project as well. Completely understand and support the DEE. I was initially a little troubled by the location of the electrical and trash, that you've got a straight shot of it down the driveway, but in looking at all the things you were trying to move around and where the roll-up door was, I understand why you did it, and I'm okay with it. There was a comment about the crepe myrtles not providing enough shading. Can you elaborate on that? That was in the conditions.
It's my understanding that it's, I mean, SOFA is full of recommendations, not necessarily requirements, and so we're trying to comply as best we can with the recommendation on 70% shading within, is it 10 years? I think it's...
I believe so. It is 10 years.
And so, you know, it's a very narrow site to be able to fit the drive aisle and the parking and landscaping. It doesn't exist today. And so the crepe myrtles and the trees, that the red maples that we're planting get us at about 49%. And obviously 11 cars inside actually would probably tip the scale even higher if we had to provide those on site, you know, if it was a larger flat parking lot. So I think that staff supported it essentially because that, you know, we provide 11 cars where the footprint of 4, and so that are all covered out of the sun.
So my concern actually wasn't that there wasn't enough parking shading. I was concerned that you might be forced to change the trees, and I think the crepe myrtles are the right choice, or the right scale for what you're doing. Okay. And then you said your landscape architect was here?
Yes, Sherry Van Dorn.
Perhaps you could talk us through a little bit what's going on with the planting, because it was hard for me to tell at this scale which plants were which.
Okay, I think the trees are pretty clear, right? Okay, so let me get to that. So we have the ficus pumila vines to cover the garage, and then the flowering vine is along the fences on Emerson Street, primarily. And then we have Nandina, which is a little bit taller plant in the narrow strip between the sidewalk and the fence. Sorry. And then we have the Dianella and the Anagoxanthus pink beauty as the accent trees along Emerson, accent shrubs along Emerson. And they also provide the accent shrubs in the not parking lot, but the High Street side as well, where we have more room. I think that's pretty simple.
Sounds pretty simple, thank you. Okay, that's all I have.
Vice Chair Pop.
So we're just asking questions at this point, or?
No, we did our questions.
Okay, so everything's fair game. Okay, great.
Everything's fair game, and you can even make a motion.
Yeah, first I'll just say that I support the DEE in this particular case. I think that in addition to all the things Mr. Hayes mentioned, one of the significant issues for me is that you would not be allowed to have any openings in the roof within 10 feet.
True.
And so that would severely limit your ability to have daylighting inside this building, and I think that the trade-off here is absolutely appropriate. The only thing I guess I'm going to suggest is it might be appropriate to provide some type of a illustration of the daylight plane in section. Right now we're just seeing a sort of a dashed line of where it occurs, and in the packet that I see
Yeah, I think we show it on the A30 on the existing and on A31.
You do? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I just missed that. That's great. Good. That solves that for me. In attachment A, in the findings, number 4 suggests that the project integrates the character of the neighborhood into the project, but I would suggest that there is no specific character in this neighborhood. And rather than that statement, I might recommend that we change that to suggest something like this project conforms to the SOFA 2 cap architectural guidelines. Something such as that. For finding number 7, the siting of the entry on Emerson and High Street creates an internal sense of order for the occupants, visitors, and general community is absolutely correct and conforms to the requirements for number 7. I find that the last sentence of that is not relevant, and I would just strike that. The fact that there's setbacks consistent with other buildings is not totally true, and I would strike that from the finding. And then number 11, where we talk about natural features appropriately preserved and integrated, existing street trees are being preserved, but it's my understanding you're adding a new street tree as well. Is that correct?
On High Street.
Yeah, so I would include that as a component of that finding. And then for attachment B, where we're talking about the SOFA Cap 2 review standards, there is a mention of pedestrian seating. And again, these are guidelines, they're not requirements, but I wanted to just ask you, if you don't mind, describing to us what you have done or why you chose not to address that particular suggestion.
So it's unclear to me what that really means, whether that is seating, 15 feet of seating out at the sidewalk for somebody walking by, or whether that could be met by having seating up by the building. And we do certainly see movable seating up by the building along the backside, because the idea is that backside would be used as the lunch, contiguous to a lunchroom and a patio space for them outside. So if the objective is to encourage, seeing people outside using a building and being sort of part of the urban environment, then I think we will meet that. If it means that you want something on the sidewalk, then we just didn't have anywhere to go.
Does staff want to provide any guidance about that?
I imagine the intent was more, something closer to the street. In this case, we have a building that's set back pretty far from the street, and parking lots on each side. So
tough to achieve.
Tough in this particular.
A lot of the guidelines talk about the pedestrian environment, and I anticipate that has to do with people who are out walking. We're talking about sidewalk widths and sort of the neighborhood character of that. And this is an unusual site. The building being set back 60 feet from one street and 65 from the other. It's really, that becomes very difficult. That said, finding number 6 talks about trellises, arbors, porte cocheres, other features. And although the comments here say the project would strengthen the relationship of the building and the street by providing easily identifiable main entrances, they are so far back that I'm not really sure that I can make that leap. And I'm just wondering if, as part of the design process, you considered putting some element out at the street to try and give a bit more presence to the entrance of the project versus just allowing it to be set so far back. And let me add into that a component of that might be signage. Is there something that you're planning for this project that would be a signage element, whether it's a monument or something that's out at the street front where it's more visible to someone who's driving by trying to find this location?
So, we're not addressing any potential street sign in this application. We saw a good location for a sign to be where we're showing it in the rendering, which would be sort of
at the entryway,
in the recess, yeah. And part of the objective of having the gray and then the contrasting silver canopy projecting out was to say, hey, there is an entrance here. It's, I think that signage would be the only really other alternative, Randy, out here or on the street, because this is all driveway. This is just meeting the 4-foot minimum for accessibility, and I think we have about a foot to 18 inches of landscape planting there. So there's really not an opportunity here, and I certainly don't see something that was like a propylea or something that you'd walk under. It's just not enough space to make it feel generous. So I think we were relying primarily on this. Now, that does not mean that there wouldn't be a sign at some point over here in the landscape, perhaps.
I was going to suggest, I don't often do this, but I was going to suggest that as a component of the fence, that perhaps an element might extend up and create a bit of a cover and some sort of an announcement of entry, and be an opportunity to attach potentially some signage, something like that. I'd be open to you suggesting something of that character to the project to try and get, otherwise, as you go past this, all you see is parking, driveway, little walkway. There's really nothing out at the street.
Right.
And to try and incorporate these guidelines for this particular project, which is, this is why we have exceptions in our codes, and we have all this flexibility, is because
there's guidelines. Yeah.
I mean, there's no one project that fits everything, but this one is particularly challenging.
Yeah. It just seems so so tight here that if you had something coming up and having a one-off piece, I'm not so sure that that's as strong as if you were able to sort of have a rhythm of elements that would take you into the building, but I think it would feel so tight and right next to you as you drove in. But we did not consider that.
Really quick thing. And one last really quick thing, as I look at the layout of your parking, the handicap accessible stall appears to me to be right up against some type of a wall element or a planter element that is just in front of the building. And I'm concerned that I believe, and I didn't look this up, but I believe that the parking regulations require you to have a 6-inch dimension clear to a wall when you have a parking stall in that configuration.
Yeah, I don't know if I would consider
I don't know where you'll get 6 inches.
Yeah, I don't think that applies to the unloading. Are you talking about the unloading zone?
Actually, the parking stall itself.
The handicap stall?
Yeah, the handicap stall itself appears to me to be immediately adjacent to
the curb.
The backing out area, right? Normally you'd have a little bit of a.
Oh, I see. When you back out.
I think the design requirements are such that you have to have a little bit of space so that you can start your turn and move. But if you could just check that.
Thank you.
I'd be ashamed for the whole project to get stuck on something like that. Thank you. I'm prepared to support the project today. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your presentation. Ken, you always do a terrific job, and in this case,
thanks.
Oh, my time's up. No, this is really a terrific project. It's a reuse of an existing building. I believe you've made the right choice in terms of the, I guess the DE, requesting a DEE. What you're asking for is relatively incidental in terms of additional height there, and it doesn't add any square footage. It's really more of a safety issue in this case, and I think you've made the right choice here in terms of the most aesthetic approach. So with that, I don't have any problem supporting both the project and the DE. I'm in agreement with most of the comments that are made by Vice Chair Pop here. I think that because of the depth of the lot and the front of the building getting lost, in some ways maybe there should be signage out at the street, identifying how to get, what's there. If there is any signage, but that could surely come back as a signage application.
Okay.
Do I have a motion here, Vice Chair Pop?
I did have a couple of additional comments on the findings.
Yeah, I had asked for a motion, so if we have one here, we can add it in the discussion.
I'll move that we approve the project as conditioned with the modifications that were suggested to the language of the findings and in support of the design enhancement exception as proposed with the condition that any signage be brought back as an application, and I'm comfortable with that being reviewed by staff.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
I will second that.
Okay, second by Board Member Malone Pritchard. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Vice Chair Pop?
No, thank you.
Okay. You wish to speak, Board Member Malone Pritchard?
Rather than speaking to my motion, I'd like to make a friendly amendment on a couple of the findings. So I'm in agreement with Board Member Pop's comments on findings 4, 7, and 11. However, I would also add to that, this is finding number 12 in the findings for architectural review. This is regarding details of construction and plant material, and our comment here is that the colors and materials are compatible. We are not commenting that the planting is compatible. I would add the planting in because it is compatible. And in the sofa findings, under entrances, number 5, it does say there's no outside pedestrian seating proposed, but I would add that there is a patio proposed that will allow for movable seating. And then the finding right below that, number 6, regarding the entrances, I would add, in addition to the identifiable main entrances, that they have also added a canopy at the main entry. And then the last one would be that if you go into the conditions of approval, the last page, the urban forestry conditions, condition number 16, it says to utilize larger species. I would strike that sentence.
Do you accept those amendments?
I do.
Okay, and of course, they're your amendments, so I assume you're accepting your own language.
I think I'll agree with myself today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other discussion? With that, we will vote on the motion. All those in support of the motion and friendly amendments say aye.
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 Okay, that's 4 with 1 absent. Thank you very much for your time
today.
Okay, we will move on to item number 3. This is a major review. 636 Middlefield Road, request by Stephen Smith for architectural review of the construction of 3 detached residential units, demolition of 2 existing dwellings, and retention of an existing building to continue the legal non-conforming office use within on a 15,000 square foot site. The project includes a design enhancement exception for a daylight plane encroachment, a side yard setback encroachment for a new ADA ramp, and to allow trash enclosures to be located closer than 75 feet from the front property line. Environmental assessment exempt from the provisions of California Environmental Quality Act per section 15303, and it's in the zone district RM15. So if staff would like to introduce the item.
Again, this project is Claire Campbell's project, and she is not here for me today. She has had an absent excused. Anyways, I have not prepared a statement beyond what the staff report is here, but I'm here for questions. We did have some engagement with the public a bit through email, and the concern appears to have been resolved. I'm not sure if there's any speakers here on this item today, but perhaps the owner can, or applicant can describe that interaction and resolution. And so this process is for condominiums, and I believe, right? And then this would come back with a preliminary parcel map, but that would not be subject to ARB review. I'll let the applicant present.
Okay, so if the applicant would like, you will have 10 minutes to make your presentation, and it would be great if you could just go through and outline the project, and then if there are any comments you want to make with regard to the public, you may do so afterwards. That would be great.
After the 10 minutes or during the 10 minutes? I'll do it during the 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We won't ding you for it.
All right. Well, we're very excited to be here. This is my wife, Deborah. I'm Steve. There was a preliminary review back in December that I could not be at, and I'm thrilled to be here today. A little nervous, but excited to move forward. We live at 640 Middlefield. This project includes 636, which is moving around to the right there. Where the building is on the left is where we currently live. The project proposes to take down our house, which is 91 years old, and currently there's 3 structures. There's the grandfathered commercial on the right, which is unchanged by this project, other than the painting and the cosmetic stuff we've done over the last year. And then there's also grandfathered commercial unit in the back. That would be removed. Our house would be torn down. We would have a decrease of 1 commercial unit and an increase of 2 residential. We're excited about the project. What really characterizes this is an unchanged environment of 4 coast oaks that, as Dave Doctor says, I should stress, really canopies the whole project. So this fills in by building these houses, but the nature of the property will remain the same. Clearly, the increases the residential by 2 structures, but anyway. All the colors, et cetera, are earth tone, desert friendly as I see it. When I designed this last September, anticipating a drought, there's a lot of eco-friendly plants that don't use a lot of water. The entire surface is basically permeable with the exception of the front entrance to each unit. And it's a live-work space, which we're excited about. My office is currently, for 20 years, Rick Stern was in the office. When I bought it from him a year and some ago, my office is now in that 636 Middlefield. It says in the report that these 2 lots, both of which are 7,500 square feet, will be merged. They actually have been merged about 3-4 months ago. So, not sure what else to say. Maybe I could describe a couple things. If you could pause it, Q. Again, there's a center driveway that will serve all 4 units. From the front of the property, you don't see much difference. Obviously, the building on the right remains the same. The building on the left, when the meeting preliminary happened back in December, the suggestions were to go back and do some design enhancements, which we've done by adding the wood panels and raising them to cut the roof lines. The rock out in front for that fireplace, again, adds detail, as does, we're asking for design exception. The fact that that canopy you see above that front door adds color and sort of architectural detail. Let's see, maybe you could continue. The building, again, on the right is if you pause there, that is the grandfathered commercial. What has typically been parking in the front will be replaced with landscaping, and that issue was a big issue with the board in December. At that point, we were trying to design it with having these lifts in the back to provide for parking, but working with Jaime, we came up with a solution that includes tandem parking, where there'll be a valet service throughout the day when there's use of those parking spaces. So we pushed that to the back. There is no parking in the front. maybe you could continue, Q. An additional design enhancement is being asked for the trash enclosure for Unit D, for which, if you continue, Q, it will wrap around to that trash enclosure. We're getting there. The trash enclosure for Unit D at 68 feet versus the 75, which is the current code, I guess. Right there. Pause. What isn't shown is that 6 feet to this towards us from that enclosure is one of the 50-foot oaks, so I can't put the enclosure closer to it. But the impact and the effect to the public or the city is zero, as there's no view of that except from the building. That trash enclosure is where the trash has been the last 30 years, so there's no change in essence of what's occurred. The other exception for that ramp, because there was parking in the front, and it could not be the handicap access, which this is all handicap parking space now, that there has to be the entrance, obviously, the house using the handicap ramp. That ramp, not the ramp, but there is a deck and has been a deck. It's not 30 inches high, it's 13 inches high. So, quotes, it encroaches, but it's always been there. And this would then be dropped such that it could be a ramp for the handicap access, which is right there. That's the other design exception we're asking for. If you can continue, Q. The fourth exception is, if you look, okay, if we pause anywhere, these have a parapet that on 3 sides of the 3 units, one side on C, one side on A, and one side on unit B, encroach into the daylight plane. And we had designed various ways that that wouldn't happen by doing sort of these, those windows, I forget what they're called, dormer windows that destroyed the look and feel of the project, that we had asked for that exception as well. Those are the exceptions. I want to speak to the concerns that were raised by some neighbors, particularly my neighbor Joan is next door, as well as there's another person that owns an office next to our house. So next to the house on the left is Joan's current building, which is therapists and a dentist or two. And we've lived next to that for the last 23 years. She has a driveway that runs between her building and our house. And I've not had a fence, which there will be a perimeter wall, as you can see to the right of that building, a 6-foot wall that runs clear back to the back of the lot. And then the back wall is already existing. And then it would run clear from the back of the lot to the front, which would be the wall that borders between our house, and Joan's property. And historically, the way they drive their cars in and out, it uses our property. So one of the issues she was concerned about parking, and potentially, and I had told her that we would simply allow her to use that space and adjust our fence such that it jogs in and gives her some space to get around her building. The second concern was that there was a window in the stairwell that could see into her building, into one office. I think one thing is to maybe use a shade, but I'm a therapist and have been in 2 different buildings the last 20 years and have had people 6 feet away with big windows. As well, our house is a residence for which they've been able to see into our living room, master bedroom, and TV room for the last 23 years. So as far as the window goes, I'm not concerned. The third issue was that this is not really fitting with the neighborhood, and maybe you could show some pictures just maybe about the neighborhood. That I think in the letter that Joan had provided, which I think we've resolved most of this, is that from a city perspective, I quote, "This property is zoned for higher density, condo or townhome. If the purpose of this zoning is to allow for more population density in the downtown area, a project of this type would not achieve the purpose for which it is zoned." I don't understand that, because it does increase the residential by 2 units and decreases the commercial by 1. It is, in fact, 3 single-family dwellings on small lots, and they're not condominiums. That's not true. It's 1 lot, and they are condominiums. And then I think the fourth issue, which hopefully was resolved, was the noise and potential debris that might fly into her neighboring property clearly the city has zoning codes about that, and we comply with that as well. I said in terms of demolition, we would try and do that on Friday and Saturday when they have less people working in the building. Do you have those pictures? Oh, well, this is right there. This is this is Trent Jones, which is across the street from Jones, which is a view straight out of her building, which is a beautiful building. Next one. This is the building that behind Joan, there's a grandfathered commercial house, and then there's about 28 units with flat roofed condos, so on and so forth. This is immediately behind, there's a grandfathered commercial unit, and this is immediately behind my property, which is 2 separate houses, also all of this zoned RM15. Next one. This is 2 doors to the left of Jones' building, 3 doors to the left of ours, which is a lot. You can see the house in the front, and you see in the rear what really looks like a barn. Fortunately, you can't see these things from the street, but it looks like a barn. This is the house immediately to the left of Jones' building. This is across the street from 636, which is a boarding house of maybe 9 different rooms. And this is directly across the street from my house, which is a flat roof condo. Directly next to it, flat roof condo. Flat roof condo, that's 3 of them. And then there was a last picture queue of maybe it's the first, there. And there was one next to that queue, this one. This is a tilted roof, as you can see, similar to, I'd say almost identical to what 636 is and will remain as. And what you're looking at the left, this is 3 doors from Joan's house and from her building, and 4 doors from ours. That is what essentially our building will look like on the left. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions here before we go to the public hearing? Board Member Malone Pritchard.
So, first question is on the accessible van parking. Have you gone over that layout with the building department yet?
Yes, that was all approved of and done with Jaime, the accessible in the rear between unit D and C.
Okay, but Jaime is not of the building department. Jaime is with transportation.
I'm sorry.
So the question in my mind is, I believe the loading space doesn't have clearance behind it, similar to something that Board Member Pop was asking about on the other project.
Actually, we did. We did do that with building, and they said that's okay.
Okay. And you addressed the neighbors' concerns. What is the area in front of Unit D?
It's you can see it there. Currently, those what looked like those bushes closest to us are existing. And then there's the ramp that goes into the front of the office building. Next to that is also current. There's a maple tree plus those 2 pots. And what currently is all red brick, again, has been parked on, is going to be both decomposed granite as well as artificial turf.
And do you foresee that as something that people would, again, park on?
No, but I frankly think that people that my office sits in the front of this building, and at least 3 times a day, somebody's coming down Middlefield and sees a large opening and chooses to pull in and turn around and go out. And I think that what will happen is sometimes people are going to use that as a backup area in order to get out and turn out frontwards.
And then the last question is, there was a comment in the conditions of approval from Public Works that you were in a flood zone, and a requirement that the crawl space not be dug down below flood elevation. So can you talk about whether your building is designed for your crawl space to start at ground level?
So we're going to have to take out the basements. Just kidding. I've been through that with, maybe it's Public Works or Larry Jackson, wherever that is, and we're all squared away. These will be slab on grade foundations, and we have the flood certificates so that it's above that level.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Pop, do you have any questions? Board Member Guyer, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay. So this is the time when members of the public may speak to this item. Do we have any members of the public? Okay, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself. I've got your card here, Mr. Weiss. Introduce yourself and then fill out a speaker card, and then Mr. Weiss, you'll have the opportunity to speak after that.
I'm Joan Willingham, and I, as Steve mentioned, have the property right next door to the south side of this building, and it is a psychotherapy and dental office. And I believe you, maybe I'm not, psychotherapy and dental office? Okay, good. The psychotherapy side, I'm a co-owner, is the one that is next to Steve's project. And so, did you receive my letter? Have you read my letter? Okay, good. There was confusion in getting it to you. And my partner, co-owner Kelly Suarto, wrote a letter for Mary Lou, the other owner. And I actually have not seen his letter, but and then he wrote a second letter saying that everything is resolved. So we're actually not, we didn't coordinate that, I just want to say. But Steve and I have been addressing the issues, the personal issues of how this project will impact my workspace, and have done so well, I think. And I appreciate that he has offered to help me with the parking lot. We have a very tight turn, and like you said, the fenders have been the cars go over the property line, and he's offered to adjust the wall so that it will continue to function. What I just heard today, which I haven't heard before, is how he's handling the parking for his therapy suite, which I believe, I don't know if you said has 4 offices.
If you could simply address the board, that would be great.
So there's very little parking in this area on the street. The dental office is busy. We have 4 therapy offices, and it just kind of works with everyone moving. It works most of the time, so I'm just concerned. That's a new issue that just came up to me, that there's going to be valet parking. I don't know where, if it's on the street or where that's going to be, but that concerns me. I also didn't understand the light plane, and I don't know if that's affecting the light going into we have one therapy office that has a window that's facing the wall of his building. I don't know if that is going to affect the light or not. I just didn't understand, just learned that. So, okay, those are my personal issues, and I think where we can work on that, fine. As a citizen of this community, and I think it's a beautiful city, I love it, and I really hope that it would be enhanced aesthetically as we go forward in time. And the pictures that were just shown, there's a lot of very unattractive buildings and stuff around us, there's no question. But I imagine over time that can be improved, and I would hope it would be. So my concern, I'm not opposing the design, I'm just hoping that it be addressed by you, actually, so that we, in terms of keeping the aesthetics at the highest level, and that a contemporary building still has a really pleasing character to it, and look like it fits in as a residential building. So that's it. That was my buzzer, wasn't it?
Thank you for your comments. If you could please fill out a speaker card and hand it to the clerk, I'd appreciate it. Mark Weiss, and if there are any other speakers, please get your card in at this time.
I just wanted to say that I was very impressed by the presentation, and from my understanding, I'm not an architect, but from my understanding, this is a great, great, great project. I find it a win-win-win for the applicant, for his prospective new tenant, for the community. And I think it's an exemplary example in that it'll really enhance a lot of the guidelines in the comp plan, and I hope it gets approved. And I think I never met him before today, but briefly talking with him in the hall, I think he and his neighbors will work it out. I think, And it's amazing that he's not a professional in that field. I said he's a therapist, I guess. And I just think it's an amazing presentation, a great project, and I hope, I hope it proceeds.
Thank you very much. I have another speaker here. Okay.
Good morning. My name's Scott Robinson, and I actually own the property to the right when you look at the screen, 628. And I approve of Steve's project. I have been in communication. I don't feel it impacts me. The daylight plane issue, I'm fine with. The back of my property, which is a level 2 or category 2 historic, is not really impacted. The back is actually a paved parking lot. Mr. Stern, Rick Stern, who owned the property that Steve bought where the existing non-conforming use, also owned mine. There is no real impact to me. He's made me aware of it since I bought it, and actually before I bought it, I rented it, and he's kind of kept me in the loop. And, you know, the neighborhood is kind of a hodgepodge of different uses. You look, because mine's a level 2 or category 2, it doesn't really bother me. I think the character of Palo Alto is defined by the many different types of buildings and uses that we have, and I fully approve of what he's doing and find it doesn't impact me in any way. Just wanted to put my 2 cents in.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And with that, we'll return to the board for comments and hopefully a motion. Board Member Malone Pritchard, do you mind beginning?
Okay, so following up on the last question I asked regarding the flood zones, one of the reasons I asked about your crawl space depth was I saw that your finished floor is 18 inches above the ground. If you're asking for a DEE for height and daylight plane exceptions and you're doing a slab-on-grade building, I would expect your finished floor to be lower than that. Can you talk about that?
Perhaps my architect can, but I think for grading and drainage, we found the absolute minimum level that could be at. If we can lower it, we will, but I think that's...
You can lower it.
I can. But maybe that's... You can speak to it. Are we 18 inches above?
My name is Q Kim. I'm with ACS Architects, the architect involved in the project. I believe the finished floor levels are actually in accordance with just being above the floodplain. If it is the case that the finished floor level can be lowered to accommodate that, we'll go ahead and do that. In no way are we asking for the DE for the daylight plane to raise the building any more than we have to. It's just that it's turned out that way, and we'll accommodate as needed.
Yeah, well, do look at your finished floor heights because you have several different ones, and they're all above floodplain somewhat. So I'm not saying you can drop it 18, but you can drop it.
We would be thrilled to, because I, as Q knows, I like to walk out the door as close to the ground as I can, and we've had to lift it based on the flood thing, so we'll certainly lower it to whatever.
Great. Okay. Can you talk about the garage roof profiles? You've got, I know you're looking at daylight plans there too, but you've got a sloping roof that then becomes a flat roof. Did you really need the garages to be that tall and to have that profile?
Yeah, well, because the units are so compact, that unit there that we're looking at on the right is 1,700 square feet. I'm coming from the Midwest, and my mother taught me there should be storage. So that, what you're looking at in the garage, is the only storage that A and C are going to have. So there's, I think it's 3 feet enough just to get a ladder down and put your furniture or put whatever's up there. Thus it's designed that way. And clearly for the light plane, it slopes at the edge so that we can't go all the way to the edge.
There was one of the neighbors, a couple of the neighbors were concerned about the screening of their views into their offices. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You said that you didn't feel it was an issue. Right. Can you tell me why it's no longer an issue?
Sure. I think we're okay with that, right, Joan? It's really just Joan's office. We'll handle it. But the issue was, currently, if you're standing at Joan's building, there's three windows, basically. Her office doesn't have a window that faces the property. There's one center office that does have a window, and then there's maybe a little kitchenette window. Now, what's currently there is my living room, and huge window. Then there's the TV room, huge window, and our bedroom windows. Those will all disappear. The only window will be a window that when you come up the steps to the second floor, and it's an 8-foot rise, so you're about up here, there is a window that provides for light that if you chose to, you could look down into one of the offices. Now, if one chose to, one could be looking out of all my windows and be looking into those offices for 23 years. So whatever the issue is, it's now 10% of whatever it was. And what can I say? But being a therapist myself, I understand the privacy issue, which Joan was concerned about. My offices have always been exposed to other windows, and I accommodate that maybe by twisting my shade. That's it.
Would you consider doing an obscure glass in that window?
I'd prefer not to.
That's all I have right now.
Vice Chair Pop.
Everything's fair game now, right? So I appreciate what you're doing here in terms of site plan and the goals of the project, the improvements to the housing stock, and the use of the site seems very appropriate to me. I'm concerned about the architecture. What you've really got here is 3 boxes and sort of an antiquated gable building. And I think there's another level of refinement that I'm looking for in the new architecture. The quantity of stucco for me is just too great. There's too much unarticulated surface of these buildings, and it's for me it's problematic. I very much like the materials that you selected. I like the wood paneling, I like the metal detailing, I like the types of windows that you're choosing. It's not that the palette is inappropriate, and it's certainly not a problem for me that you've chosen this style of architecture. It's just the sort of refinement of it that I think at this stage is still lacking a bit. And it's subtleties like the applied panels not being as integrated into the architecture as it might be. I'd like you to look for opportunities to find datum lines around the building where all of the windows are at the same sill height and you can run a water table around the building, or some type of a reveal in the stucco. You know, maybe it's a significant reveal. Maybe it's, you know, it's something that's got some real dimension, and you can paint it a different color, and you can get a belt band that goes around that starts to create a horizontality to these buildings that I think currently is lacking. The DEE on this project for me, not a problem. I think the requirement for the way the trash work needs to work and the accessible ramp and all of these things are perfectly appropriate. I don't have any problem with the height of the parapet, especially after hearing from the neighbors that they don't have an issue with it. So it really isn't the structure of the project in any way, and I want to be really clear about saying that. I don't think you need to overhaul here at all. But for me, the stylistic choices that you've made are not refined enough yet, and I'm looking for you to take it another level in depth. And, you know, you've got great architects on your team. I've known these guys a long time, and I know that they've got great capacity for this. I think there's terrific examples in town of a lot of buildings that are similar in style to this that you could study and start to maybe adapt some of your design to some of the cues that they might provide for you. But right now it just feels too much like 3 boxes. And I need it to be more than that in order to feel like it is compatible with the neighborhood character and fits in contextually with the other buildings that are around it. It's just a little too severe for me as it is today. But otherwise, I think really you have a very nice project, and I think that with some refinement, we're right there.
Okay. Do you have a photo of the front of the, I think, I understand what you're saying. And the real view of the project certainly, I don't believe, looks as boxy as the way these things generally look on this wall. And there's a front view too, Q. That I pointed out that 2 doors down, there's the barn behind that house. That would, one could say at that point, looks like a barn behind your house, which it does, because it is a barn. Yet, what this does structurally from the front, I think, is fairly broken up. From the back, they are boxes. I'm not sure, in terms of, those windows are each placed, obviously for very good reason. Lining those up is going to be problematic in terms of what it means to live inside those homes.
Mr. Smith, we're really not supposed to be having a
Sorry,
sort of
Don.
a dialogue
Oh,
here.
I apologize, didn't
you
know
made
that.
your presentation, and the board's reacting to it at this point. But what we'll do is,
I apologize.
towards the end, when we're finished, before we make a motion, what we'll do is, or we take action on the motion, we'll allow you, a couple of minutes to
Absolutely.
to comment on the motion. Vice Chair Pop, do you have anything else?
No, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. One more quick thing.
Sure, go ahead. You've got 50 seconds.
I will say, and I think it's Building A. There's a fireplace that's on the property line side of Building A that has this crazy chimney. And it's not a wood-burning fireplace. It has a lot of flexibility in terms of what that vent is capable of. And I understand and appreciate that you've placed windows carefully for certain views. I always think of windows as picture frames and, what kind of artwork you're going to see inside that frame. It's really important to put those in the right places. But in particular, I imagine the fireplace that you're using could probably directly vent through the exterior wall and not even have a vent that goes up the wall. I don't know if those are operable windows and that becomes the issue. I'm just giving you direction here. Sure. The only thing I would tell you is that the zigzaggy fireplace for me is not okay.
Okay. With that, Board Member Guyer.
Okay. I guess I'm looking at this a little differently than my fellow commissioners up here. I just think it's way too much. When I look at this, I see nothing but an ocean of parking spaces and and areas to transverse to get your car from point A to point B. I think the 2 areas in both front of Building A and Building D, even though the intent may not be to want to have people park there, people are going to. And the reality of it is once it's built, you can't really undo that, and people are still going to park there. The requirements that as I said earlier, the DEE is granting those, the daylight plane issue, even though maybe the particular neighbor right now doesn't have a problem with it, but I think it's just a matter of because you want the building to be a little bit larger than I think the daylight plane would require it to be. I don't really see any justification for granting that. The side yard setback I can see because of the ramp, and again, the accessory building placement, I just don't see the requirement for it. I think you're trying to put too much on this site. You indicate that this is a condo development, and that might be the case, but they are made to look like it's 4 or 3 or 4, depending on how you look at it, individual units. So the person that lives in Unit B or Unit C, I think that's awfully cramped. It really is, and I don't know if that's a benefit to the built environment to be back there. It also, based on the size of the residences, I think it's unrealistic to assume that there are going to be 2 cars. I mean, for a 2,000 square foot house, I got to figure there's going to be a kid or 2, and that means you're going to have either 3 or 4 cars. So, and maybe 4 is excess, but I figure nowadays 3 is very common to have that. I'm just having, like I said, I have nothing against the style. I happen to like the architecture, but I do agree with my fellow member that it really isn't refined enough. I mean, there are some nuances that I think that need to be done to really make it a good quality representation of mid-century modern, whatever you want to call it. The other thing that's interesting is that the one building on the lot that is actually the business is the one that looks most residential, which is obviously because it's the existing one. But even the way you see it there, to me, it looks, I get the impression of a very fancy parking lot in front, then a gate to get into, a residential area in the back, and it's just way too much. I can't support this project.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for your presentation. I'm very sorry that you weren't able to be here for the initial review, but you and your wife, as well as your architect, did listen to a lot of our comments and incorporate a lot of those thoughts into the current plans. I think this is a terrific project. It's very exciting. It shoehorns in twice as many residential units. It is zoned RM15, which is multifamily, low-density multifamily housing. So from that point of view, I think it's very appropriate. Our board doesn't really get involved in the use and zoning aspects of it, but we do follow the development regulations for that zone. And we deal with the quality and character of the buildings. Well, first of all, I want to say that I think you have the right solution and you're going in the right direction. I'm very much in support, though, of some of the comments that are made by Vice Chair Pop here. It's a very exciting project, but I don't feel excited about the materials. I think that in some ways, the project has sort of been dumbed down a little too much, and so it lacks some of the excitement or enthusiasm that I want to see in the housing. I think that the stucco is a great material, and when it's contrasted with the wood, it's very exciting. But there's something about it there's just a little too much stucco and a little too much wood, and it's just not reading to me as an exciting development. And so I think you can go the next level. How do you go to the next level in making these very exciting units? And just I'm just brainstorming here, your fireplaces, for instance, they read as being very heavy, and in some ways, maybe they don't have to be that way. These are not wood-burning fireplaces. They could basically vent outside the wall. They don't have to read as an element. But if they do read as an element, they should be an exciting element. And maybe simply having a double insulated flue liner that's painted an interesting color, might work. It certainly gets beyond Vice Chair Pop's comment with regard to the zigzaggy fireplace, because if it's just simply a flue that goes up the building, it can go straight up the building. It doesn't have to zigzag. So I'm looking for just this project to just get to the next level. I think that you've done your homework. You've done a really great job. Your architect has done a terrific job here. I just want to see some of that excitement brought back to this in terms of, some of the detailing and maybe looking at some of the material elements. Just a couple of sort of house cleaning items here. I want to describe for your neighbor, just so they understand that what a daylight plane is. It's in some ways it's a misnomer. It doesn't really have to do with daylight. What it really has to do with your right to view the sky and being able to do that from inside your building. And so that's why a daylight plane is particularly important. Not that you're going to get additional sunlight or it's blocking any sunlight from your property. So I just want you to understand that. And then if you're being generous, for the applicant, if you're being generous in allowing your neighbor to use your property for access, you certainly should look at the possibility of putting in what they call an ingress-egress easement, some sort of easement on your property, allowing them to use that piece of property for access purposes. If you're going to move the fence over, certainly the paving and any plantings that go in that area should be thought of in terms of their property, because you're creating this access over your property in order for them to get used to be able to use it. In the future, they're going to improve their property, and it has to be communicated, I guess, in some sort of way that they have the right to improve that little piece of your property for their utility. So I think that needs to be described in some way that works for everybody here. Good fences make good neighbors, as they say. And then I think there was one other thing, the parking. I think you've solved the parking issue. I don't necessarily think that it's necessary to have a valet out there moving cars around. If each individual building owner or condominium property owner has their parking set up in tandem, they know how to manage it, and through the condominium association, you can sort of work out what the details of all that parking is, and it should happen automatically. It should happen by the members of the condominium association, not through a third party that's brought in, because those things disappear. They don't happen. And then I guess I had one other question, and it's really for staff. Because of this being condominiumized, will there be a map that will go forward to the Planning and Transportation Commission?
A preliminary parcel map process for less than 5 units can go just to the director's hearing. It is appealable to the Planning and Transportation Commission and Council, but the process for 4 units or less is a director's hearing, which is a public hearing that occurs in the afternoon. So has not been submitted yet, the map.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the process is that it just really involves our review and recommendation, and then a director's hearing for the condominium map.
Right, so you would not, when they submit the preliminary parcel map, it would not be, subject to a hearing by the ARB or input from the ARB. Staff would ensure consistency with the, if approved design and the preliminary parcel map details to make sure, and then the conditions would carry forward towards the building permit process.
Okay, so would we see a tentative map?
Not at the ARB or at the Planning Commission unless there was an appeal request for them to hear it.
Okay, I'm just, where I'm having, I guess, the difficulty is here we are giving a recommendation, and it's being suggested that it's going to be a condominium, and as you know, that's one of the issues here. And what if it went forward as it is without a condominium map?
Well, that is true. I mean, what is the project description? Is the project description condominium units? I see in the report, and I believe you can ask the applicant what the timing of that map filing is. We would require, because whenever there's 3 units or more, they cannot convert to condos following the building permit process. It has to all happen and get recorded at the county before the issuance of the building permit. So,
okay, let me tell you where the rub is and why I'm deeply concerned. Okay, and then we can make sure that this is dealt with early on. If it's built the way it's suggested without a condominium map, the owner has full ownership of it, it would actually wind up in the hands of rental housing. But if it moved forward as a condominium, it would be subject to our low-income housing, needing to provide either in lieu fees, or would it not be subject to in lieu
The
fees?
number is not high enough to pay into or provide on-site a below-market unit.
Okay, but once the building permit's approved, they could not convert it to condominium.
Right. We would work with them very closely to make sure they do submit. If the intent is condos, we wouldn't want them to get to the building permit submittal stage even until they've gone through the preliminary map and parcel map, which is a two-step process, and recordation of that prior to submittal of the building permit and issuance.
Okay, great. You don't need to talk. What we'll do is simply, I'll ask for a motion here, and then we can see where this goes, and then you can speak before we vote on the motion, okay? Do I have a motion here?
So I'd like to ask a question of the applicant. I'm going to make a suggestion that we continue this item to a future date and allow you to make some revisions and come back to us. The question for you is going to be, would you like that to be open-ended, or would you like a date certain for that?
I would really like a date certain.
Okay,
It costs me a lot of money every
Amy,
month.
if you could help us to figure out what that date might be, I can prepare a motion that.
Sure. I guess, typically we see how much there is in the way of, changes, and then the architect can gauge, what kind of timing is needed. But, looking forward to future dates, the 21st is absolutely jam-packed, so we do have August, so that's not an option, and I think it would be too difficult for the applicant to turn plans around. September 4th is the meeting after that, which is an option. So I would suggest that as the first option.
What would be the next one after that?
Okay, September 18th.
The 4th would be fine. I'm gone, but you'll be here.
So, but those are the two in September, and I guess gauge how much changed.
So September 4th was the date being suggested? Wow, okay. So what I would like to recommend today is that we, I'll make a motion that we continue this item to September 4th. Is that what you said? Right, September 4th. We'll have an expectation that the applicant will come back to us with a revision to the architectural character of the buildings, a refinement of the style, organization of the elevations, trying to coordinate window placement and just sort of clean up and organize, bring a logic to all of this that will hopefully allow us to come to a quick approval.
And I will second that. Okay. Mr. Smith, if you'd like, you may speak to the motion. You'll have 3 minutes to sort of wrap it up.
Just to say thank you very kindly. We'll do everything we can to address all those issues by September 4th. Maybe just on the condo piece of it, it takes a long time to do that, but they've been working on that for months. And clearly, it's going to be airspace condominiums, and each of those will be separate condos, airspace deals based on this map. There's no intent to, and I'm not keeping this as one property. It's not 4 separate ones because my understanding is it's too small to split into 4 separate ones, so it's going to be 4 condos.
Thank you very much for your presentation today. Okay, shall we vote on the motion to continue? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes 4-0-1 with 1 member absent. Thank you very much for your time. We will take it's already 10:30, so 10:35, so we'll take a 5-minute break. Study session 101 pedestrian bicycle bridge, request by Public Works Engineering Division for a study session to discuss the design principles that will inform design competitors what Palo Alto envisions for the new bridge could be. Okay.
Good morning. This is Elizabeth Ames. I'm in the Public Works Engineering Division at the city. And I came before the ARB July 3rd. We had our consultant at the time, and we kind of did a whole recap of where we are with the process on the design and the environmental assessment. But just to briefly do a recap of that. So we're studying alignments that cross over Highway 101 at Adobe Creek, and we're hoping to focus our design competition on alignment 1. I do have a map of that. I don't know if you have a map of alignment 1 in your packet. Do you have a picture of a graphic? You don't have a graphic?
Flow chart.
The flow chart. Do you mind if I just hand them this? Oh, here's another one.
Carry on.
Yes. So there's like an aerial shot of this. So we've been working over the past 2 years with Caltrans since we had a scoping meeting in September of 2012. And we are doing all of these studies to be able to build within this footprint that is, there's a little bit of an area, like about an acre or so in the Baylands on the west side of 101, and then it crosses over, that's on the east side of 101. And on the west side of 101, it's kind of sandwiched, the bridge is sandwiched between the frontage road and the sidewalk area there, tying into the Adobe Creek Reach Trail. That's also part of the environmental assessment, is to connect the Reach Trail to the bridge and take, that's the connectivity to take people up and over the freeway to the Bay Trail system. And as you notice on alignment 1, it kind of wraps into the Bay Trail. It kind of does a U-turn into the Baylands, into the flood basin there, adjacent to the Adobe Creek and adjacent to the frontage road at West Bay Shore. So that's really the focus, alignment 1, that we're asking, hopefully, the designers to submit proposals on. And so with that, we're also developing design guidelines for the designers. And then the design guidelines, we were going to have like this goal statement, but I think recalculating that is, we're hoping to do like design principles instead, because a mission statement is a little too specific. So we're hoping to kind of get design principles instead of design like a mission statement. So the mission statement here on the first slide, we actually proposed, it said, let me just read this. Do I have this on here? We had, oh, it's in the notes, sorry. It basically said, oh, sorry, I'm going back to the, it's on this first slide, but essentially it says, we had a goal statement. It said a landmark bridge and gateway into Silicon Valley and the Palo Alto Baylands, serving transportation and recreation needs for the enjoyment of the community. And I felt like the ARB wasn't really thrilled with that. We wanted to get more specific, that we're the heart of Silicon Valley. We have an innovative spirit. And so now I've come up with this design principles, or this, let me just go to the next slide. These design guiding principles. And I'm hoping that this is going to be kind of the information that inspires designers. They see this, it's not the end all, but it's supplementing the design guidelines, which are very prescriptive, right? It talks about the height over the freeway. It's got all these Caltrans regulations in there. So I'm hoping to kind of bring it up, inspiring, kind of like the mission statement, but it's more general. So I'm hoping to get your input on these 3 guiding principles: the originality, the versatility, and the sustainability. So I'm looking for feedback on this, and I'm hoping you can help. And then the next step would be to take this information to City Council on Monday, which is August 11th, and we are going to hopefully go with the design competition contract with AIA California Council. So it's very exciting. So that's actually in the packet right now. And that actually is similar, the design competition process is similar to what you see in attachment C in your packet. This is just a site plan of the crossing at 101 at Adobe Creek, and there's that dash line that shows the reach trail. This design overview this is alignment number 1, and this slide actually shows what I was saying is on the east side of 101, you've got the Baylands integration to the Bay Trail, crossing over 101, and then the bridge is kind of sandwiched between the confluence of Barron and Adobe Creek and the frontage road, tying right into the Adobe Creek Reach Trail. Oops. Where are we? Am I going backwards? Oh. This is just a background slide. Essentially, just to wrap this up, I'm really just hoping to focus on the principles that I'd like to include in the design guidelines. And if we want to talk about the competition, we have time to do that as well. So thank you.
Okay, it's time when members of the public may speak to this item. Okay, we don't have any members of the public. Okay, we'll return to the board and hopefully we can wrap it up here. Begin with Board Member Guyer.
I don't really know what to say at this point. I mean, I like, your enthusiasm seems, over the top, but I think it's absolutely spectacular. This seems very reasonable to me.
Okay. Vice Chair Pop?
I like very much that you've shifted to using guiding principles as a component of the explanation and to stimulate the process. I'm wondering whether you considered including a statement about cost and whether that would be an appropriate addition here. I think that balancing originality and design and sustainability with the limitations that are clear about the cost, whether that would be an appropriate change in your perspective.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking about that's a good point because we want to stay within budget. Even though it's at this conceptual phase, it's going to be hard to do cost estimates. But yes, that would be a great comment or suggestion. So, or are you thinking about putting that into the sustainability somewhere? I don't know. Where do you suggest?
I'm thinking about adding a 4th.
Oh, just a brand new one. Okay.
Brand new one. That speaks to a sensitivity to the project requirements for maintaining budget. Yeah, I mean maintaining budget sensitivity, or wordsmith it however you like, right? Whatever is appropriate. But I do think that in the context of all of the things that you're doing, and particularly in light of the changes that we're making here of not requiring someone who's done 2 bridges and all of these other things, that it's opening it up to a broader range of people, that there's a likelihood that we would need to make sure that people understand that there is a cost control that's critical.
Go ahead.
Excuse me.
Actually, I should have clarified that. So I did take a lot of your comments into consideration, but not the one where it's more inventive, open idea competition. I did talk to Caltrans about this, and because they're our partner, right? We're going over their freeway, and they are, I would say, concerned about having an open competition. I actually have to put this design into the EIR and an environmental assessment, and I don't want to have to recirculate the environmental assessment in order to accommodate something that may not be contemplated as we had hoped. And so with that, we're focusing on alignment 1. That's one kind of constraint. I don't want to deviate from that footprint, because then I'm talking about additional permitting and maybe all these issues. The Caltrans is a little nervous, I think, on the architectural piece. We're not sure what this is going to look like, but I told them I was going to include that architecture. Hopefully it follows alignment 1. And I was going to include that architectural winner in the visual impact assessment. So there's a lot of moving components dealing with Caltrans and trying to get the optimum design here, trying to be creative yet trying to follow this process. So my fear, just from an engineering standpoint, is that I want to make sure that this thing gets built on time and within budget. So I was hoping to do this qualification-based competition. Maybe there's some flexibility on, right now we're saying 2 bridges designed and constructed in 10 years. I really don't want to have somebody proposing something that's never built a bridge. Now, there could be somebody on the team that's creative, and then you've got this, main firm making sure that it's meeting the site constraints, the budget constraints, and they've actually done this before. Yeah. So that's my challenge. So I didn't really want to do the open competition, but budget actually is a concern, so that's still a valid point.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to encourage you to include budget as one of your guiding principles, but I will tell you that this has taken a serious left turn from where I saw it going, with the addition of the requirement that the design team have 2 bridges under their belt. And I will tell you that I'm going to go to council and plead my case before this is approved, that is completely outside the range of what this should be. The goal here is to have an open design competition. I'm perfectly fine with it being alignment 1. I think that you could even just say it needs to be alignment 1. That's fine. But to limit this really unique opportunity to people who have that amount of experience, and not to open it to the creativity and all the fun that this could be at an initial stage, and then bring in someone who's qualified to finish it, seems to me a terrific missed opportunity. And I'm not willing to just let that go. I'm sorry if that's frustrating. I understand you have pressures, but I'm really not going to back down about that, sorry to say.
Board Member Malone Pritchard.
Picking up on that conversation, I would also agree that the 2 bridges within 10 years is really limiting. I think, yes, you want people who are qualified, who can get the job done and do it well on time and have it stand up, but prescriptively saying it has to be 2 bridges in 10 years is not the only way to get that. Allow these teams to illustrate to you why they're qualified. And there are lots of different ways that they can be qualified. So why limit it to just that one thing? So I would just build it into the application, essentially. Tell us why you're qualified, rather than show us 2 bridges. I know that's not the way Public Works normally does things, but this is not a normal public works project.
Are you complete there?
On that topic, I think Elizabeth had something to say back to me.
So, you know, I do respect the creativity component of this. I know it's very important to have a unique landmark type bridge. My concern, again, is I have to deal with Caltrans. I have to get these permits. There's a lot of regulations and process I have to go through to get this project approved in order to, unfortunately, meet the funding deadlines. I have federal money involved, $4 million of federal money. And right now, I'm supposed to have a bid set to them at the end of 2016. Now, maybe that funding source can get shifted to another fiscal year. I could work on that and get an extra year in there. But I mean, there's a lot of unknowns right now. But right now, the deadline is December of 2016. I need to have a bid set. So in order to get 100% plan specs, basically ready to go out to bid, I need to go through a lot of design process with Caltrans, which I haven't really started yet, because we've done a little bit of design, 15%, but it's not really the full, you know, the actual design, because we don't have the designer on board. So I'm trying to do this in tandem, right? It's a little like I feel like a juggler right now. But so I would appreciate some guidance on the qualifications you're thinking about. My concern is I need somebody who knows how to build a bridge. I can't afford to have these back and forth questions and answers with Caltrans and their structural teams questioning the design. I understand creativity, I get that, so I want to be able to balance these needs. So I'm just trying to let you know my perspective.
How about we have your 2 bridges within 10 years or a structural peer review from somebody who has done that?
Okay, I'll bring that back to the group. That's getting closer. Okay, we'll have to think about that. Yeah, thank you.
But as far as your these 3 principles, I'm absolutely in support of them. I think they're great, and I like that they're not too prescriptive. So.
Anything else? Okay. I'm going to jump in here. I didn't have the opportunity to speak on July 3rd, so I will discuss a couple of things here. First of all, I'm in complete agreement with my colleagues, Vice Chair Pop, as well as Board Member Malone Pritchard. I think by having that requirement in there on 2 projects within 10 years, I think we're going to wind up with the ZIT. You know what the ZIT is? The ZIT is a technical term for ugly parking garages. And I'm going to use, by way of example, we did 2 public parking garages with local architects that had absolutely no experience with parking garages previously, and they partnered with somebody who did have parking garage experience. And so I think that there's great opportunity here. This is not rocket science, okay? It's a very engineered approach. It's a very small project by most caliber. I think that in this case here, somebody aligning with the right structural engineer, the right structural engineering firm, is going to come up with a great solution. But to say you've only had experience with doing bridge structures, 2 bridge structures in the last 10 years, is in fact going to wind up being the solution. It's going to wind up being a bridge over a public highway that's going to look like a bridge over a public highway. That's not what we're looking for here. Otherwise, why would we be having a competition? So you have a couple of approaches. I think that Board Member Malone Pritchard had made some excellent suggestions there. I think that the opportunity that you have here is that you could there are other approaches that you could take. The city could, in fact, take on the engineering portion and have a consultant on board that's an engineer, and whoever wins the competition works with that engineer to make the solution work. That's another solution. So it opens up the competition to a much wider variety of people, and it forces that engineering firm to, in fact, make the solution work. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so we thought about that, but typically that's not very effective. You really want to have a team that's worked together before, because the structures and the civil engineering, we don't want them arguing amongst each other and trying to produce something. So we really wanted a good team that's actually been creative and done this before and know the players. So I really wouldn't want to do that with the structural engineer, but maybe there's some creative way to require this structural peer review. Even that is could be problematic. It's another outside peer review. Anyway, I just need to think about this some more and figure out how to balance.
Where I'm coming from is that the innovation in structural engineering has come so far that, I mean, if you look at Frank Gehry's buildings, for instance, using airplane designing software to design buildings was unheard of 15, 20 years ago. And so today, the constraints of engineering have been freed from what we consider conventional building practices. And so if you want an innovation building, I'm in agreement with Vice Chair Pop here. We really have to remove some of those constraints and really go towards that. Now, let me just talk to your guiding principles here. I think what you've got here is really great. Needs to be a little bit more dynamic in terms of the wordsmithing department. And so a couple of thoughts that I have here is the word innovation really has to be one of those bullet points. If we're...
Sorry, do you want innovation as a separate? Or
instead of originality, innovation.
Okay.
And really what it needs to talk to is Palo Alto being the center of technology.
Okay, so instead of originality, we'll say innovation, or?
That's my comment. I don't know how my colleagues feel. We're going to go through a second round and we'll let the board react to it. But I think innovation, because if we want this to be a competition and we're focused in on innovation, Silicon Valley as the center of high technology, that's what really stands out, creativity and high technology. The second thing, the versatility, I think what we're looking for here in that area is really something that's landmark, something identifiable, something that says that Palo Alto is the gateway or the heart of Silicon Valley. And that, that's what I'm looking for here, is a landmark structure, something that's going to be an edifice, something that's going to stand and endure centuries and say, you're heading down Bayshore, this is it, you've arrived. And then I think the third bullet point is just fine. The sustainability, I think, is just great and hits the mark exactly. So those are the three sort of, guiding principles that I'm looking for here. And maybe my colleagues have something else that they want to add to that. Board Member Guyer, you had something you wanted to
I've got a couple of if we're getting to this degree, I don't, or I should say, I think it should be a team, not have a separate engineering firm that does the design. I would want the designer or the architect to be the lead on that team. That way, there's much more of an incentive for him to have the ability to tell the structural engineer to make it stand up, rather than the engineer going, yeah, well, we really can't build that, or we can't hold that up. And if they're both equal, then you end up with just an argument. Because it's probably going to go, or as you said, it's going to go through the AICC. It's going to be a licensed architect that's going to be the final designer, I'm assuming. The one recommendation I would put on there is that the structural engineer is an actual SE, not a CE. And that would make a big difference right there. And again, this is not recreating another Bay Bridge. I mean, it's in the reality of things for a structural engineer, spanning 100 feet is not that big a deal. I mean, we seem to be thinking it's a big, massive thing. There are plenty of buildings that I've done where I've needed to span clear for 100 feet. And whether it's a building or going from point A to point B, it really is the same thing. So I don't see the fact that it's a bridge, if you want to call it that. It's a pedestrian bridge. There's no real loads involved in it. I think we're blowing this way out of proportion as to what it's going to be. So I think it would be just fine that it should be one team. Like I said, it should be run by the design firm, and that it should be an SE firm that actually does the engineering.
Vice Chair Pop?
So as I'm reflecting back on some of the comments being made, first of all, I completely agree with Chair Lippert's suggestion about switching the word innovation and originality and relabeling that item. I also wanted to just suggest one other potential, which might be design reflective of our time and environment. Design reflective of our time and environment. And I think that it's important to understand that, part of what we're looking for in this project is a really graceful transition between the ground over the freeway and back to the Bayland, and the difference between those two places and what those mean. And finding a way to integrate those thoughts into this might be valuable. Back to the issue of who gets to design this, who has the opportunity to have input or attempt to design this. First of all, I think that Board Member Malone Pritchard's concept is great. You could pre-qualify even a few different structural engineers, so people might be able to select from who they might decide to incorporate in their team. Many competitions that I've been part of, when I call to construct my team and say, let's go do this together, it's not unusual for a structural engineer to say to me, I'm also working with this team and this team. There are only so many that can do certain types of projects, and there are only going to be so many that are really qualified to do this. But the design can come from anywhere. And so whether you pre-select a couple of consultants, whether you go ahead and identify someone, I mean, I've also worked on lots of teams where I had never met the structural engineer before. I had never worked with that civil engineer. They hadn't worked with each other. But we've all had really great successful projects. And just finding someone who can work together as a team is really the only important thing, and has the qualifications to do it. I really believe that we can get this done within the time frame that you're describing, within the methodology that we're describing. I think you're hearing very clearly from 4 people that the approach that is on the table currently is not what we want to see. And we really have to find a way to change it and adapt it so that it works for you, but it also meets the criteria we had originally envisioned. And so, to the degree that we can be helpful in that, happy to do that. But I really do think that the methodology or concept here has to change before this goes forward.
Board Member Malone Pritchard, do you have anything to add?
I will just support what Vice Chair Pop said. It's a normal thing for architects to work with lots of different structural engineers. There are lots of different engineers we draw from depending on the projects we're working on, or sometimes projects come with engineers already, and it's not a problem to work with somebody that you haven't worked with before. So don't be worried about it having to be a team that's worked together. And I think your schedule is fine. you'll be able to get this done.
Okay, now for the serious stuff. Okay, how'd you partner with AIACC?
How did I partner?
Yeah, how did it come about that you were partnering with AIACC?
What happened, we were working with the AIA San Francisco chapter, and that executive director had left, and the chapter was not interested in doing the competition, and that's who we were talking to. So I went to Sacramento, and because I had some samples of a design competition that was given to me when I was working with Margie, and it had this AIACC on there, so I went over there, and they agreed to take on the competition, and they hired Margie as a sub-consultant. So it worked out really well. So it actually worked out better because I was really nervous about the whole thing. So I said, what are we going to do? And now we've got the California Council. And they've done a really good job on marketing, more than the other, I think, chapters, or local chapters. I've seen their international work and how they've run competitions. Not that this is going to go international, it might totally be local. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, it's the design that comes to the table in the end. But so there's a little bit of a story there. So yeah, so they are on board now, and that contract is going to council on Monday.
Yeah. Okay, I hate to rain on your parade. Okay, I'm not going to, but I'm gonna tell you, I think you're creating some problems here. Generally, the way the AIA is structured is that it's a three-tiered organization. There's the local component, which is in this case, the AIA Santa Clara Valley. Then there's the state component, the AIA California Council, and then there's the national component, the AIA, which is the American Institute of Architects, which is located in Washington, D.C. I thought that you were going to come here by way of nexus, that because this is a California state highway, 101 is a California state highway, that was the nexus, and that would be the appropriate venue. But in this case, first of all, going to AIA San Francisco was totally inappropriate because they are the local component of San Francisco, and their jurisdiction really stops virtually at the boundary of San Francisco. And in fact, the members of the AIA San Mateo County seceded from San Francisco, even though, San Mateo County used to be part of San Francisco County. They seceded from the San Francisco because they were very unhappy with what the San Francisco chapter was doing. AIA San Francisco really has very little jurisdiction here on the peninsula. And I know you're trying to tap into their members, but the truth is that AIA San Francisco was not appropriate to contact to begin with. The California Council, as far as their involvement, I can see some nexus because it is a California state highway, but the truth is that the AIA Santa Clara Valley really has more to do with this than the California Council. And it's the policy of the AIA California Council to stay out of local chapters' jurisdictions. So I'm going to, I said I hate to rain on your parade, so I'm going to make a suggestion here to you in a minute. Okay, I'm going to make a suggestion here, which is that I think that the appropriate venue is the AIA overall, and it should be a joint competition of AIA Santa Clara Valley, AIA California Council, because you really want them to help get the word out to architects statewide. I would also bring in the AIA San Mateo County because it is so close to the county line, and there are so many members of that component that would be interested in how this bridge crosses 101, which is part of their jurisdiction as well. And then lastly, I would bring in Caltrain as a partner of this because it is Caltrans, because it traverses a Caltrans property. And then lastly is the city of Palo Alto. And what I'm beginning to think is the formulation of you're going to have a jury here. And so their participation would not only be getting the word out, but also putting up the jury. And I think a jury of 5 for this competition would be appropriate, which would be a representative of the AIA California Council, a representative of AIA Santa Clara Valley, a member of a representative of AIA San Mateo County, a representative from Caltrans, and somebody selected from the city of Palo Alto would be an appropriate sort of body. Now you can respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I did get similar feedback that we need to advertise with all of the chapters locally from the last ARB meeting. So that was good, and I spoke with AIA about this. And their intent was to involve the Santa Clara chapter because that is appropriate. The only reason I went to San Francisco is because I had heard that Margie had run a lot of competitions and I wanted somebody really experienced in this kind of level of a competition. So I contacted her. She just happened to be working in San Francisco, so it wasn't on purpose that I did something out of ordinary. But so out of serendipity, it ended up being California Council, which ended up working well because they can collaborate, right? They can work with all the local chapters. So I thought that was kind of a win-win. And they did say that they were going to advertise them jointly with because that is appropriate. That's the protocol that you are suggesting. As we're in the Santa Clara chapter, it's gonna be a joint competition with them on their being recognized when these invitations go out. And regarding the involvement of the other agencies, what we were going to do is kind of develop this technical advisory panel. And that's where I was going to involve Caltrans, VTA. I could involve, like you were suggesting, a member of AIA Santa Clara and AIA San Mateo. I could get, whoever these people are that are interested on this technical advisory panel. So this panel would be basically providing a commentary on the designs when they're received. And so it's going to be the jury itself. I think AIA was suggesting that they would be architects that would attract designers. Sorry, my voice is going. But they would attract the architects. I thought they were saying that they would be architects. They say there's 5 architects. And these people would attract designers, and these designers would want to be judged by them. That's kind of the attraction of this jury. But in combination of the jury, we were going to include what we were going to have is like a joint jury commission board meeting. So at the last ARB meeting, I had suggested like 2 members of this ARB could be part of this jury, kind of like an interview. You're hearing the presentations, you're seeing the concepts being presented, you can ask the questions just like in a public meeting. So the jury would be here, a couple of ARB members, possibly a couple of, Park and Recreation commissioners or so. They would be present during this interview and discussion about the concepts. After this joint jury commission meeting, we would have public comment, because that was another good point that you guys had brought up, that we can't really just have a show and just like be entertained, right? We want to have the public comment. So we changed our strategy on that, and we're opening this joint jury commission meeting up to the public. They'll be able to comment after the presentations, similar to what we do now. It's just, I'm a little worried about the time, but it might be a little bit long, but so that's how we're involving all these different parties. I know it sounds a little complicated, but I think we've tried to get all of the local chapters involved with this somehow through their advertising, like you're suggesting. I could get, if you have recommendations on who on the AIA side, or maybe AIA knows, but on the San Mateo chapter and the Santa Clara chapter, if you know somebody who might be interested in being on the technical advisory panel, that would be helpful. And then we can start getting these people together and getting ready for them to comment on the designs. And so these commentary kind of memos will be provided to the jury at the joint board commission meeting. So you have public comment. So just to go back, the presentations will be posted like on YouTube and on the website. So people will be able to see the designs before the joint jury commission meeting. The technical advisory panel will provide a commentary on those. You will get public feedback before the presentation. Then at the presentation, people will be able to come and comment as well. But I think that the jury and during this meeting, this joint jury commission meeting, will have a lot of information before and during the meeting to make an informed decision, so that jury can reconvene and deliberate and then come out with the winner. So once we come out with the winner from the jury, that's not the end. I want to take this back to the full ARB and get the ranking from the ARB.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
kind of a nutshell what's happening, yeah.
I'm going to tell you where I have some trouble. First of all, I should disclose that, I was an officer for the AIA San Mateo County as well as an officer for the AIA California Council. And I know Margie Driscoll particularly well as the previous executive director for AIA San Francisco. And I think it's a really great organization, and they do some really great work. Where the rub is, or where the trouble I have, is that you've described a process that you're trying to make it really broad, but in fact it's narrowing. And so by, first of all, saying that the firms, in terms of qualification, has to be a firm that has had two bridge experiences in the last 10 years, is a limiting qualification, not an expanding qualification. The second aspect is by going to the AIA San Francisco and then California Council, I also believe that also is a limiting qualification in some ways. And what's going to wind up happening is that only those architects that are, quote unquote, at the cutting edge of what the state sees will wind up being in this competition. It will, in fact, alienate and elbow out any local firms, which are particularly important to the vibrancy and vitality of Silicon Valley, from participating. So what I want to try to do is, or what I see is, you want to somehow open up this competition. And then the third limiting factor I see is the process by which you're having a working group or a working board that's vetting this and commenting on it and then coming back to ARB. If this is truly a competition, then it really needs to be a competition. And we set the criteria of what the competition is in terms of the aesthetics or the quality and character aspects. And then we trust judges or a jury to be able to make those final recommendations. And the same thing for public works. If you have certain criteria, and Caltrans has criteria, it's in the documentation, and let the people that are putting together their proposals worry about how they're meeting those criteria. That's really what a competition is all about. And then thirdly, the judges, which I think are particularly important, and we need to have a broad range of judges here. And so my suggestion is that you simply go to the California Council, you say you get a juror to be on this, and how you pick that juror is completely up to you. It may wind up being Donald McDonald because he's done the Bay Bridge, but it could be anybody. It could be the president of the California Council. Go to the Santa Clara Valley chapter. Say you get a judge. You get to pick somebody to be on it. and you go to the AIA San Mateo County. I'm pointing to Robert because Robert's an officer with that group. But Ken Feinberg, Ken Kornberg is who's an architect that has also served on this, is now the current president of the AIA San Mateo County. They get to pick somebody to be on that jury. And then you get Caltrain and you say, hey, Caltrain or VTA, you pick a juror. It might be an engineer. It could be anybody they think is appropriate. And then lastly, I think the city should have a representative. And I think it should be outside this body. We're writing the criteria for this. Maybe somebody from the Arts Commission so it balances out the engineering. So you wind up with a very diverse group picking, going through the submissions and simply selecting what they think is the best submission here. We'll go with one more round of comments and then we'll finish this item up. Board Member Guyer.
Yeah, actually, Lee's and my background are fairly similar in that sense, but I couldn't have said it any better. I think that's an excellent approach.
Vice Chair Pop? Nothing else? Board Member Malone Pritchard? Okay. So thank you very much. You've got our feedback. Hopefully this will come back to us one last time, maybe.
Well, we're going to council on Monday, so it'd be good to hear your feedback at that meeting. I do think that AIA is going to select the jury, and all of these comments will be considered when they formulate who's on the jury, and this could weigh in on that because they haven't decided who it's going to be. So I think it would be good for you to attend the meeting and kind of flesh out the details if you want to be involved with how the jury gets selected.
Okay. If that's the case, I'm going to suggest that we have a member attend Monday night's city council meeting. Do I have a volunteer here? Okay. No?
I can't Monday.
Okay, I guess I'm the representative, and I will certainly attend Monday night's city council meeting. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go on to board member announcements. And first of all, I want to state up front that I'll be retiring from the Architectural Review Board at the end of my term, which is in, I guess it's October 31st, as will board member Malone Pritchard. And so on August 25th, they will start the recruitment for our replacements, and the filing deadline will be September 22nd, and they will make the appointment beginning November 1st. So I wanted to get it out there for the public so that they can begin to look forward to submitting those applications, and we will be beating the bushes to finding our replacements, because if they don't name those replacements, unfortunately, we have to stay until they find them. So we're going to do everything in our power to find applicants. So are there any other announcements? Chief Planning Official.
Thank you. No, we do have a very large meeting for August 21st, our next meeting, and I sent a agenda to all of you so you're aware, and asked for sandwich orders just in case.
Okay.
In the likely event that we're going past noon. Hopefully we won't have to contend with more of this, but
And I have one other very sad announcement to make, which is that Stephen Turner will be leaving us left us as
yesterday was Stephen Turner's last day.
I thought the 8th was his last day.
No, it was yesterday. He stayed for the HRB meeting, which I also attended because I will be taking over, going to those meetings on Wednesdays, yes.
So I just wanted to wish Mr. Turner the best of luck. I think he did an outstanding job. He's been probably been here as long as I have. Actually, he came on board, I think, when I came on the Architectural Review Board the first time. And it's also Curtis Williams' birthday, so I just want to wish Curtis Williams a happy birthday. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.